Hi guys, Greg Alba here.
John here, Humphrey.
Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest is coming out this week, and we got our tickets for it already. We're going to a super late night showing.
Dead Man Tell No Tales.
Dead Man Tell No Tales. My bad. Dead Man's Chest is the second one. So this week, John and I are rewatching. He hasn't seen 3 and 4.
I haven't.
I've seen all 4. But we're watching all the movies this week, and we're going to be doing reviews of each one. You know, doing one of those film review series things that people on YouTube do.
We're doing what we wanted to do for Alien, but then we saw Alien early.
Yeah. So
we saw Alien like the one time we got to see a huge movie like 2 weeks in advance.
So we're doing a review series. So we're kicking off with Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Black Pearl.
And this is an interesting experience because you saw this in the theaters, and we saw it when we were like 12 or 13, somewhere there. You were probably 13, and I was probably 12 when I saw it.
I was a boy with my family. We went to the cinema, and I was dazzled.
And it was a magical experience. That first movie is one of the rare movie theater experiences where I remember when watching scenes again. When we watched it last night, I remember watching those certain scenes in the theaters and how I felt when I watched it and how magical it was. Just the little touches, like it's scary and suspenseful in the beginning, and then when they show Orlando Bloom when he's like takes the candle off the wall and everyone's laughing and the tone starts to slowly shift and you see Jack Sparrow for the first time and it's hilarious and the ship's sinking.
I really remember, I share that with you because thinking back on this movie, I do remember the room, like the theater, like I remember the whole experience of seeing
I remember the
Pirates.
feelings that I was generating, and it was hands down easily one of the best movie theater experiences I've ever had. Rewatching this film, I've seen it probably like 20 times at this point. I've seen it so many times.
And on the 21st viewing, it just kind of sucks now.
21st viewing, I started finally realizing some things that I've heard before, and then I'm rewatching it finally. It's been a few years since I've seen it. It does kind of drag a little bit.
When you get like 2/3 of the way in,
it's after because it's all you guys have seen the movie already by this point, so we don't need to like break down the plot for you guys. But it's right around the time I think when they commandeer the ship and when they trick the Navy fleet into taking the wrong ship, and then they escape on that one ship, Jack Sparrow and Will Turner. And right around then is when it starts to slow down a little bit for me, but it's still like kind of the middle ground of some scenes are still great and some scenes are not. And knowing what I have in store for the other Pirates movies, I would say this is definitely the most solid entry. This is definitely the best entry of them all. It's the best Jack Sparrow performance we've gotten. Because watching Jack
really playing a character still.
It's just the right amount of animated backed with enough subtlety to make this film work. I would say the same thing for Jeffrey Rush, because everyone's kind of Jack Sparrow outshines everyone in this film. But Jeffrey Rush, this was the first time I've seen this movie going, man, for some reason, I just never noticed how great Jeffrey Rush is in this movie. He's a perfect villain, but he too has that right layer of heightened personality, backed with knowing just the right level to make this not go into this is not a believable performance. This is over the top. You don't feel that when you watch Jeffrey Rush.
Well, he's like, it's appropriate when he's having fun, but there are things that really matter to that character, and you could feel it. Like, there are moments there that are kind of heartbreaking for Barbossa.
I feel like that's what I got away the most with when watching this movie, was the subtle touches of Barbossa, of really feeling his motivation, more than just, I want my soul back. You can feel a guy who has been robbed of his soul, who has no senses anymore.
You feel the life of that.
He can't taste, he can't touch, he can't do anything, and there's this whole reoccurring thing about him just wanting to eat a fucking apple.
See, I remember this movie pretty well, and even watching it again last night, I remembered it pretty well. But it's been a long time since I've actually seen it, and I have not seen it as many times as you have. So that was one of my favorite things going back and revisiting. Is like the first time I saw it, I didn't register what that dining room scene between Barbossa and Keira Knightley was all about. Yeah, it was all about. And then I watched it this time. I was like, oh wow, like you're just living through through her. Like, you're literally soaking up the last scraps.
As she's eating and drinking, you feel like it looks kind of creepy and perverted, but then you realize he just envies her, you know?
He just envies her eating.
Yeah.
And like the first movie especially, and you know, we're revisiting them all, but that's what I appreciate the most going back, is this movie is full of little notes across the board. Like, in each character has their little notes. The visuals have their little notes. Every shot has a little story inside of the main story.
Oh, this is one of Gore Verbinski's perfectly composed films, I think. I like Gore Verbinski's work, and I've always thought he shoots his, even if I don't love his films, I think he shoots them really well.
Oh, Cure for Wellness.
Cure for Wellness, baby. Cure for Wellness.
I was actually watching this, and I started flashing back to the end of that movie when it gets really creepy, and I was like, people were probably around at this time.
But Gore Verbinski has a total knack for horror, and I think that this film has has all the right elements of horror, where it doesn't cross too far into dark territory. It doesn't cross too far into this is too scary for children. You brought up because this isn't as you guys have noticed, this isn't one of our like typical review format that we do. We're kind of like, this is a revisiting review.
Retro.
Yeah, there's a revisit review. And looking at all the stuff with the skeletons and everything, you brought up Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
And and you could definitely feel that inspiration for that kind of whimsical yet scary flair that was happening with skeleton characters.
And I never picked that up the first time. But there's stuff that watching it last night, I swear, like when all the skeleton arms are poking through the window, the governor's window, when they're like attacking the ship, like that is straight up. And the whole thing with the desk drawer where he's got the hand in it, like that's all.
Oh yeah, and he's like, because we're hops back and forth between whimsical and kind of scary.
And what I loved going back and rewatching this was that I could see, you were talking about Gore Verbinski as a director, and I was like, yeah, I think this may be kind of a masterpiece for him, because it has everything I've come to associate with his vision, inside of it, right down to like when he did Rango, like that, like. This I didn't think about. I was like, oh wow, Gore Verbinski's doing like an animated feature. But after watching this, I was like, there's some great cartoon timing and some great cartoon energy, some comic strip stuff in this movie that lends itself perfectly to that.
Well, and this movie's wonderfully edited too.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Like the transitions that they have always works. Just even like little touches like at the beginning with young Elizabeth Swann, when she sees the black pearl, she closes her eyes and it wakes up and it's Keira Knightley. Like the transition there. And one of my favorite edited moments is when Jack Sparrow, early in the movie, when he's in his cell, and then pirates from the Black Pearl like notice, oh, it's Jack, he's alive. And then he says something to him that like provokes one of the pirates, and then he reaches his arm in to grab him. And it's that reveal shot.
That first reveal.
Where, whoa. Cool. Yeah, it's a cool ass shot because they've done nothing to hint at what the curse is, and this is our first hint. And the way that it's edited is like, it's just a really cool moment. It takes you by surprise. The trailer reveals that, but in terms of movie watching experience, it's a really cool moment that makes you go, "What the hell?" And
definitely. I mean, like I was surprised to find so many moments still pack that punch. Going back I really do think. Pirates came out when I feel like we were starting to get the really big studio machine that we have now, where it's like, franchise is the thing, let's do sequels, let's get big. And going back to revisit this, I saw the second movie, and I liked the second movie, but even at the time, I understood some of the complaints. And this, I think, is a classic. Like,
this is a classic.
It's pretty classic. Like, everything, even if it does bloat out sometimes, like, everything seems really thought out, and everything seems really of this one big piece.
I wouldn't say it's. I don't know if I go so far as to say it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
But a Disney classic.
I would say Disney classic and one of the best blockbusters of all time. I would definitely put it up there.
Because watching it back, it feels like a real movie.
Yeah.
Like the production values are amazing, the costumes are beautiful, and like there is some CG that doesn't always hold up, but there's so much like that you can tell they really made this film, and it's impressive.
It's exciting. It's adventurous. I mean, and even looking back at the smaller performances that weren't as beloved, like the characters were really loved for fans of the franchise, But looking back, I'm like, Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom both do a really good job in the film, too.
Yeah, I appreciated them even more. Like, I just thought they were pretty growing up. But yeah, like,
exactly.
I liked the both of them in this. I thought they had chemistry. I liked their choices. And I even loved, who I found myself really appreciating was the whole relationship between Elizabeth and the governor, the guy Jonathan Pryce plays.
Yeah.
Like, everyone in this movie, even like you said,
even the Commodore too.
He's on point. Like everyone's on point. Everyone is playing a character. Even like the weenie second to the Commodore guy.
Yeah.
Who's just kind of has that smirk on his face the whole time. Like he's even a character.
And all the characters have a growth too. You know, Will Turner embraces the bloodline of being a pirate. He embraces being a pirate. This movie kind of does glorify piracy
and dishonor.
Yeah, it really does when you really break it down. Because like the ending to me, it was the first time I've seen the ending where I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. What just happened?
I'll give you that there.
When Will Turner helps Jack Sparrow escape, and Elizabeth Swann steps in, and I'm like, I'm siding with Will Turner, and then the Commodore is like, all right, I guess I'll let this shit go. It's like I get his growth of, all right, he's letting Elizabeth Swann go, and he's learning to kind of find some ground of respect for Jack Sparrow and what the pirates have helped out with in terms of this mission and whatnot.
Look, fine, you did Homegirl solid.
But it was such a short conversation that just made the Commodore and all the soldiers go, all right, I guess we'll let you. We were all about to hang him. We had this big ceremony of hanging Jack Sparrow. We'll let him go. We won't go after him.
This isn't going to be a weird PR situation to deal with the rest of the city or anything like that.
And we'll let Will Turner, he just helped a criminal escape off this. We're just going to make everyone in the Navy look really bad.
I will give you, it does sort of read like, this is just what you guys do.
Yeah.
Go on. We'll find you. We'll take to the sea and track you down, whatever.
But even the little touches, I noticed more of Elizabeth Swann's obsession with the pirates from being a little girl. It's not thrown in your face, but it always comes at the right moments. Like I really bought that moment where she gets discovered in the closet with the medallion by the two pirates, the two funny henchmen, which I kind of appreciate, because when you first see these guys, the guy with the glass eye and the shorter, heavier one, the hello pulpit, that one, him. When they first see them, they're killing human beings in their introduction.
Yeah,
he shoots the guy in the head in Elizabeth Swann's place. But as the film keeps going, you learn to enjoy them. They're terrible people when you first meet them, but they become likable and they're used in the rest of the films as the films keep going.
Well, and I like to. I noticed this time for real. There's a pair on both sides, because you got the two like royal guard dudes, and you got the two pirate dudes.
Yeah,
you have like pairs all throughout this movie.
It might have been the first time I watched this where I noticed how solid the screenplay was. I've always noticed performances and direction and excitement, but watching how perfectly composed this script was what really stood out to me. Like going back to my point, when Elizabeth Swann gets caught in the closet with the medallion, she calls parlay on it, and then she starts giving a whole breakdown.
Yeah.
And even as the film keeps going and she starts learning more and understanding the pirates more, it makes sense and why she would even fall for Will Turner when she has that moment at the very end when she's like, he's not a blacksmith, he's a pirate.
Yeah.
Because she's always been attracted to the pirates. She's always been
drawn.
That. She's our modern day girl. She's not about being
about
a princess.
That royal life.
Yeah, she's not about the royalty,
Well, that was the thing that I appreciated a lot more. I appreciate her character a lot more because before I wasn't paying as close attention. When I was a kid, I was just like, oh yeah, there's got to be a female romantic lead.
Yeah.
But like watching this, I was like, oh, it's surprisingly natural how they build that, or at least to me it was how they built that character and how they made her believably like a tough, spunky girl, who just has a fixation.
She does a great job too.
Yeah, totally.
She does a wonderful job. And Orlando Bloom, I believe his whole arc into trusting the pirate, because just watching like Jack Sparrow constantly trying to manipulate the situation. I love it because he is it is constantly going back and forth between he sucks at what he does and he's amazing at what he does.
Yeah.
And constantly, it's fluctuating, and he has the worst of luck, but sometimes he prevails.
He has this weird quintessence of piracy that only seems to make sense or work for him.
and in all these movies, I still never remember the one character's name, and he's on all of the movies.
The guy with the mutton chops?
Yeah, the mutton chops. Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah.
Gibbs is great in the role too.
Yeah.
And I love his loyalty, and even they have an arc of they're always sticking to the pirate code, and they just leave Jack behind in the beginning, like when he's in the cave. Fighting with Barbossa, but in the end they come to rescue him, you know?
Well, and that's another fun element of this movie that I didn't pick up the first time too, is like everybody, the whole movie, like just a running theme of the movie is eventually people going just bloody pirates, you know?
Yeah.
Like, even the pirates say that about other pirates,
Yeah.
and it just makes this running gag out of like, they do whatever they want, like even if there's a code.
Yeah. And also the sword fights still hold up.
They do.
That sword fight with Orlando Bloom and Johnny Depp.
That's
a really good sword fight. Yeah.
That's like, I was sitting there watching this. I was like, this is what studio movies are supposed to be like. I'm like, this is fun and swashbuckling, but it's also engrossing and fantastical. And like that whole fight isn't just cool. Like at first it's very close quarters. They're going back. It's technique. And then it gets fun and whimsical when they're like up on the rafters and stuff. You know?
I feel like the first one had the right blend of, you know, a period piece, pirate movie, and mystical elements.
Totally. And just the right amount of like spooky.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
But as the films keep going, they get darker, more spooky, and a lot more heavy on mystical stuff, which takes away a little bit more from the realism world. But I feel like this film is the most perfectly composed one out of all the Pirates movies that have come out yet.
Yeah, I was really enthralled going back to
This
this.
is 14 years ago when this movie came out, you know?
Yeah, this holds up really well.
It holds up really well for a film more than a decade ago.
In fact, I like things more now than I did before, I think.
Yeah, and it's still really funny.
Yeah, right.
I was still like cracking up at
hilarious.
so many scenes that are still really funny.
Like there's some great character because everyone is such a character that there is some great character comedy in here.
Yeah.
Like that's probably one of the most magical things is like when you see it done right, you're like, see, you can be spooky, you can be heartfelt, you can be dark, and you can make me laugh all at the same time. You know?
Why is the rum going?
Yeah.
Why is the rum? I love that scene so much.
And that was the thing is like even like scenes like that feel jokier. I was like, wow, these are still based on the character. Like I still get why they're all saying these things, which is just a nice, like as a writer, it's a nice thing when you can see a movie do that.
Even like the comedy part, like, and then they made me their chief.
Because that's what Jack would be saying. Yeah. Like that was such a great, like that moment busted me up, I think, harder than any other time, because like this movie, one thing I gotta give huge respect to this movie for is juggling.
Yeah.
Because this movie has to balance so many moving parts, and most of the time they're all kind of going in the same direction from multiple angles, and so like that moment with Jack is like in the middle of a completely different sequence, and they just cut to him for that one line, and it's perfect.
Because you're right about that juggling, because it's easy for a film like this to get overloaded, bombarded when you got so many characters, a bunch of different plot lines that are all connecting to the same thing, and yet I never once thought it was overload. Not once did I actually think too much.
Or did I forget about a plot line? Or be like, whoa, I haven't seen this guy in a while.
And they managed to tie it all up. Like the movie ends.
Yeah.
It ends. Yeah. It ends in a way where you can see sequels, but you don't need sequels. Yeah.
Quite.
As opposed to 2 and 3. This one ends in a way where, this is a perfect part 1. And at the same time, you know, like the Pirates movies have been talked about as being, you know, just money-making machines, and that's why they make them. But they have things in them where you're like, did they have these sequels in mind prior? They talk about Davy Jones a couple times.
But that's a well-worn sea thing. Like that's ages old.
Well, no, I know, but they still mentioned the Davy Jones.
But anything pirate.
You're not letting me finish my list, Sean. They take like the Dead Men Tell No Tales. They have Bootstrap Bill, who becomes a prominent character in 2 and 3.
That's one I think.
But they all make these things that they're mentioning a prevalent part of all the sequels.
I think it's half coincidence. Like Davy Jones, I think they probably just got the idea to go, oh, we could actually make a real Davy Jones now that we're gonna do this again. You know? Or I think the one thing they definitely probably thought about would have been Bootstrap Bill.
Bootstrap Bill.
Yeah. Because I don't think there's anything real underneath all that. The other thing too is the music.
No, the music's always been great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just forgot how much of a score there is there, because you always think of the dun 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 dun. You think of the main theme, but there are a lot of great themes, and like that wooden like flute pipe thing that shows up throughout the score is great. Like, and that's something I don't remember as well from at least the second movie. Is like the score has a distinct aura that really makes you feel like you're out there somehow. It's not just swashbuckling. It's also really kind of, it has that dark and magical quality, I guess.
Totally. Well, yeah, I would say this film is fantastic. I would say borderline masterpiece.
In terms of like a studio, like a blockbuster
masterpiece.
This is like an ideal blockbuster for me. Like there are only a couple complaints I can think of, and everything else was just kind of a treat,
Yeah. Because the only reason the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes is because the action sequences go on for the action sequences go on for a while.
Yeah.
I don't imagine the script had like 10 pages of action sequence written out. But in terms of like a story, it's all perfectly there, and the action scenes go on for a while, and they're all perfectly composed. The humor's there. It's magical, and it's to this day, it's still a magical experience.
Totally.
So yeah, and I'm sure that even though this retro review is primarily praise, there will be criticisms in the later movies that I know are coming. Yeah.
So enjoy it while it lasts. Enjoy telling us that we love everything.
All right, guys. Well, you can subscribe to The Real Rejects, John Humphrey on Instagram and Twitter. Go check out our Patreon, where we got a bunch of exclusive rewards for you guys, a bunch of exclusive video content to you at our lowest reward tiers. So go check it out as soon as you can. Much love to everyone who watched this video. And what do you think? What's your favorite parts of the Caribbean movie? Tell us in the comments below.